A twist ending can absolutely make or break a movie. Get it right and the audience is both stunned and eager to watch the film again, but miscalculate it and it basically collapses the entire story. Hell, sometimes an unconvincing twist is additionally frustrating because it's clear that the filmmakers were onto something at one point, but didn't quite get the finer details right. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 movies that picked the wrong twist. Number 10, Wonder Woman. The twist we got. At the end of Wonder Woman, the Greek god of war Ares is revealed to have been Sir Patrick, a member of the Imperial War Cabinet all along, who plans to destroy humanity through war in order to bring paradise back to Earth. However, of course, this ploy is thwarted when Diana herself defeats him in a CGI-slathered final battle. The twist we wanted. It would have been infinitely more interesting though if, after General Ludendorff's defeat, Ares just never showed up and yet humanity continued to wage war regardless. Having Diana realize that war is an ugly aspect of human nature and one which doesn't need the influence of a deity would have been a considerably more satisfying twist ending than shoving David Thewlis into a CGI costume for a garish, dull, digital slugfest. It would have delivered both a welcome subversion of expectations and served up crucial character development for Diana, while the twist we ended up with instead just felt like a cynical studio note. Number 9, The Matrix Reloaded. The twist we got. In fairness, The Matrix Reloaded actually delivers 2 climactic plot twists for the price of 1. Firstly, that Neo has found a way to use his superhuman powers outside of the Matrix, harnessing them to disable a fleet of incoming Sentinels, and secondly, that Agent Smith has managed to reach Zion by possessing Resistance member Bane. The twist we wanted. While the precise mechanics behind Neo's ability to manifest powers outside of the Matrix were never explicitly explained in Reloaded or any other Matrix sequel, many fans took it as quote-unquote evidence of an altogether nuttier twist, that being that Zion was in fact another level of the Matrix. After all, what better way to truly pacify humanity than giving them the illusion of escape and salvation? It would have totally rewritten the rules of the franchise in a fascinating way, even if it admittedly may have opened up a huge can of worms where plot holes are concerned, and certainly wouldn't have gone down well with every single fan. Number 8, Big Hero 6. The twist we got. As it turns out, in Big Hero 6, the kabuki mask-wearing villain yokai isn't tech guru Alistair Cree as expected, but rather Professor Robert Callahan, who was believed to have perished at the start of the story, but in fact, faked his own death. Now, it's certainly not terrible as secret villain twists go, but the screenwriters missed a far more compelling version of this twist that was hiding in plain sight. The twist we wanted. So in this imaginary version, yokai isn't Professor Callahan, but instead protagonist Hero's older brother Tadashi, who was also believed to have died in the fire alongside Callahan. Though in the final movie, Tadashi is seemingly dead for real, bringing him back as the shadowy villain would have presented far more compelling dramatic possibilities than simply having yokai be a relatively unremarkable character who had a brief role at the start of the flick. Having Hero face off against his own brother and having to talk him down from causing more mayhem basically writes itself. Plus, if Tadashi was brought back onto his side by the film's end, they'd make one hell of a team for the sequel, a sequel we're still waiting for admittedly. Number 7, Antebellum. The twist we got. Antebellum revolves around a successful black woman, Veronica Henley, who was kidnapped and imprisoned on a southern slave plantation. Until film's end, we're left in the dark as to what exactly has happened to Veronica, before it's then revealed that the plantation is part of a modern-day Civil War reenactment part, where racists can live out the fantasy of owning slaves that are in reality kidnapped black people. The twist we wanted. The marketing for Antebellum actually implied something far more interesting though. That being that Veronica had been sent hundreds of years back in time to an actual slave plantation. Now, the idea that Veronica had been forcibly sent back to the past by a crazy racist cabal would have made for a more intriguing twist than the Black Mirror light reveal that we actually ended up with. The village twist didn't work that well when M. Night Shyamalan first did it almost 20 years ago, and believe me, we'll definitely be talking about that more later on. So rehashing it here, even through the lens of the slave trade, was always a recipe for disaster. Number 6, Terminator Salvation. The twist we got. As was pointlessly spoiled by the movie's marketing, midway through the 4th Terminator film, we learned that Marcus Wright is actually a human hybrid cyborg. At the film's end, Marcus lays down his life in order to keep John Connor alive, allowing for his heart to be transplanted into a dying John. The twist we wanted. Shortly after Salvation's release though, director McGee revealed 2 alternate twist endings for the movie that didn't make the cut, yet both of which would have steered the flagging series in a bold and intriguing new direction. Firstly, Salvation was going to end with John Connor dying for real, but in order to maintain his status as the iconic figurehead of the human resistance, his skin would then be grafted onto Marcus, effectively allowing Connor to live on as Marcus in disguise. The idea of the resistance leader secretly being a man-machine hybrid would have been a deliciously ironic, if undeniably divisive, way to close things out. The other, even ballsier ending though went further by not only having Marcus assume a deceased John's identity, but once Marcus/John was in the presence of the Resistance's high command, Skynet's programming would kick in and have him murder every single one of them. Number 5, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. The twist we got. 2010's A Nightmare on Elm Street remake actually restores an aspect of Wes Craven's original concept for the character, which was ultimately abandoned. That being that rather than being a serial killer, Freddy Krueger was also a child molester. Later in this film, the remake suggests the possibility of Freddy actually being innocent, before then just whipping back around and confirming that, surprise, he was indeed guilty as charged. The twist we wanted. Yet shortly after the film's release, the co-writer confirmed that his original version of the script featured a jaw-dropping third act twist. That being that Freddy was indeed an innocent man, tracked down and burned to death by an angry, illogical lynch mob. The notion of a collective of emotional parents creating the very monster that they thought they saw in their midst is certainly fascinating, and back in 2010 it would have lent Freddy a truly unique reinvention. Instead though, we got a half-assed suggestion that Freddy might be innocent before quickly circling back to predictable business as usual. Number 4, Sunshine. The twist we got. Late in Danny Boyle's sci-fi horror film Sunshine, physicist Robert learns from the spaceship's onboard computer Icarus that there's an unexpected 5th person aboard the craft whose oxygen use will prevent the mission's completion. As it turns out, this stowaway is Pinbacker, the captain of the first Icarus mission, who has been driven insane by his contact with the sun, which he believes to be God. And like that, Sunshine transforms into a disappointingly familiar slasher movie for the remainder of its runtime, as Pinbacker tries to slaughter the rest of the crew. The twist we wanted. So in this hypothetical version, you've got to ditch Pinbacker and instead reveal the 5th crew member to be Icarus itself, with the ship's computer becoming murderously self-aware and then attempting to prevent humanity from saving themselves. Throwing a rogue AI into the mix may not be the most original twist in the world, granted, but it would have been considerably more interesting than just having the remaining crew fending off a crazed murderer. Number 3, Jigsaw, the twist we got. There's 2 twists for the price of one again here. Firstly, that the central game in Jigsaw actually took place 10 years in the past, and that the killer is actually pathologist Logan, who survived said game a decade prior and has been waiting in the wings as Jigsaw's original secret apprentice ever since. The Saw franchise has wildly overused the timeline rejigging and shadowy apprentice twists over the years, so enthusiasm for Jigsaw's finale was unsurprisingly pretty low. The twist we wanted. So instead, you should just keep it simple and reveal Logan as the killer, but not actually an apprentice. Basically, the twist from Spiral would have worked much better for this movie, that being that Logan is an independent Jigsaw copycat seeking to test corrupt police officers. Given that Jigsaw even ends with Logan brutally killing Detective Halloran for freeing a man who later murdered his wife, it fits pretty neatly, but the apprentice and timeline twists just felt like unnecessary convoluted dead weight. Number 2, The Village, the twist we got. Of course, an M. Night Shyamalan twist was going to make it onto this list, and he's never pulled off a more infamous rug pull than in The Village. Despite marketing and presenting the film as a period thriller set in a remote 19th century Pennsylvania village, we find out in Act 3 that the story is in fact set in the modern day, and the village was created by a group of grief-stricken individuals keen to insulate themselves from the outside world. This twist has remained hugely divisive in the near 20 years since, and for many marked the first sign that Shyamalan couldn't always tell a great twist apart from a bad or even underwhelming one. The twist we wanted. But Shyamalan could have won audiences back by dropping a double twist. Sure, reveal that the village is indeed fake and the monsters in the woods are just villagers in disguise, but after this, the real twist could have occurred, showing actual monsters showing up to terrorize the village. At this point, the third act completely flips the script again, as Ivy and the other villagers attempt to fend off the real monsters, and it's fair to assume that the commotion would probably attract unwanted attention from the outside world. It would certainly have made for a more chaotic and entertaining finale than the rather anticlimactic resolution that we ended up with. Number 1, Red State, the twist we got. Kevin Smith's Red State is a surprisingly entertaining little horror film in which a group of horny teenagers end up being preyed upon by a fundamentalist conservative church sect led by Pastor Eben Cooper, played by a brilliant Michael Parks. During a climactic raid on the compound by the authorities, though, a strange trumpet sound blares out, with Cooper's followers insisting that the rapture has finally occurred. Moments later, though, it's just revealed that the sound was in fact a prank facilitated by a group of local college students who didn't take much kindly to the practices of Cooper and his cult. The twist we wanted. But Kevin Smith soon enough revealed that his original intended twist was that the rapture would indeed come to pass. In this version, ATF Special Agent Keenan would watch as both members of the church and his own colleagues exploded from the inside out, before witnessing a 10-foot-tall angel arriving and running one of the churchgoers through the chest with a giant sword. And best of all, the final shot would show the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse riding through the sky before the film then abruptly cut to black and rolled credits. Smith's fans immediately lamented that this awesome-sounding twist ending didn't come to pass, but by Smith's own admission, the film's tiny $4 million budget couldn't accommodate such an ambitious sequence.